Make no mistake about it, the tsunami of Chinese electric vehicles is coming. And Europe is sleepwalking into an abyss.
Decarbonization is leading to de-industrialization in Europe, and the competition isn't always fair.
Sometimes it feels that we are not competing on the same rules with our competitors.
If it's not fair, we have to just simply use our trade defense mechanisms.
As long as the European automotive industry will start to feeling much better than today.
Europe needs to become much more competitive in the entire process from the mine to the end product, the electric vehicle.
In 10 years, how many new mines do you think we will have in Europe?
I hope that we talk about at least something between 10 to 15.
If the European car industry wants a future, we in the Nordics would be happy to provide the critical raw materials needed to make it happen.
And the Nordic countries lead by example. The Aitik copper mine in the north of Sweden, the largest open-pit mine in Europe. Dr. Peter Tom Jones, an environmental scientist and climate author, argues there is the need for more mining in Europe to counter climate change, and for these mining methods to be more responsible.
Responsible mining means minimizing environmental impact, safe working conditions, while respecting local communities.
And more environmentally responsible mining is essential because the demand for critical materials will skyrocket by 2040. These materials will be needed in much greater quantities to eliminate the dependency on polluting fossil fuels. The director of the KU Leuven Institute for Sustainable Metals and Minerals has a big idea.
What if we would show more ambition in Europe? What if we would take the whole supply chain for our green technologies back into our own hands, from mine to electric vehicle? Is that possible? My answer is yes, we can. Here in the Nordic countries, they have the resources, they have the technologies, and they have the desire to do so.
Even in a geopolitically unstable world, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the threat posed by China, and the everlasting Middle East conflict, the Nordic countries are doing well, according to the Bloomberg New Energy Finance rankings. The Nordic countries are the best in class in terms of industry, innovation, and infrastructure, with Finland just leading its neighbors, Sweden and Norway. In terms of the overall ranking, China is the undisputed leader because of the sheer quantity of their natural resources and the size of their economy.
With the arrival of the brand new Critical Raw Materials Act, there is new hope for Europe to be less dependent on other countries. But isn't it too little, too late? Take, for instance, the car industry. The European car industry used to be one of the most flourishing sectors of our economy. But with the rapid explosion of EVs, electric vehicles, everything is changing very rapidly.
In the coming years, the Chinese car industry will grab a much larger slice of the market. Chinese electric vehicles will be 20 to 40% cheaper than their European rivals, making them much more attractive to consumers.
So an electric car is basically just a computer on wheels. It needs a lot of IT and it needs a lot of critical raw materials. And these are the two things that China has in large quantities, which makes it difficult for Europe to compete.
Electric vehicles require about 6 times more critical metals than conventional petrol or diesel cars. The battery contains lithium, cobalt, and nickel, The motor requires magnetic materials based on rare earth metals, such as neodymium. EVs also contain more than a mile of copper wiring inside the electric motor. As a result, EVs need more than double the copper of a regular car.
Everybody knows that China is endowed with loads of critical metals. But what comes as a surprise to many is that Europe, in fact, also has in its bedrock quite a lot of critical metals that we can exploit and extract.
Kiruna, in the very north of Sweden, 200 kilometers above the Arctic Circle. At the beginning of 2023, the largest deposit of rare earth metals in Europe was found here, known as the Purgeia deposit. This discovery could be a real game changer for the green transition. Dr. Jones is allowed to go as close as possible to Purgeia.
Hello,
Hello, Ulrika.
welcome to Kiruna.
And Ulrika will be his guide.
And we have chosen a beautiful day to go
It's
underground.
fantastic. And for September, it's wonderful Kiruna weather.
But underground we will not see the sun.
No, it's kind of hard. We're now going into the car and driving about 1,000 meters underground to see one exploration
1,000
tunnel.
meters, you must be joking. 1,000 meters, that's impossible.
No, it's 1,000 meters underground, and we're also going to eat on the what I think is the deepest underground restaurant in the world.
The Purgeia deposit is more than 1,000 meters underground, accessed by kilometers of pitch-black tunnels.
I guess you can really get lost here if you take the wrong exit.
Yes, you can get lost, but there are emergency signs everywhere. So if you just follow them, it may take some time, but you'll get out on the other side.
So I visited a lot of open pit mines, but this is a completely different experience, an underground mine. But it's very important because we're on our way to the exploration tunnel for this Purgeia rare earth deposit, where we hope also to find some neodymium. And neodymium is extremely important for developing strong permanent magnets for electric cars and wind turbines. And in our labs in Leuven, we've already done quite a lot of tests to show how strong these neodymium iron boron magnets can be. And it's really spectacular.
And this is a neodymium magnet. We put a magnet here, so let's check how strong it really is. This magnet can lift over 1,000 times its own weight. And these are the magnets used in electric vehicles, and this is what we'll be focusing on in our project.
Today, Europe is completely dependent on China for imports of neodymium. And China's near monopoly has had alarming price effects in the past. In 2011, China implemented export quotas on neodymium, leading to a temporary price increase of 700%. And this could easily happen again. In order to mine at this depth, a mini city has been built underground.
Wow, this is a little city in itself.
Yeah, it is, and it's...
The mine is operated from here, 1,300 meters underground.
We have coffee rooms, restaurants, ordinary offices.
Wow, this is really impressive. I did not imagine you can make offices like this at this depth. So it's safe here, it's not going to collapse.
No, it's safe here. It takes too long to go above ground, so we have restaurants both above ground and underground.
Oh my God, what's happening here? What is all this?
This is where we load and work with hydraulic stone knuckers, and this is, instead of being down in the mine, we can sit here in a control room using joysticks, controls of Xbox or PlayStation.
PlayStation at 1,400 meters depth.
Yes.
Dr. Peter Tom Jones gets the chance to also have a go.
How do I move? How do I hit?
Yeah, you have to feel, you have to feel.
But that's easier said than done.
Now he thinks he's loading here. What are we doing?
So with all this automation, are you one of the most modern mines in the world?
Yes, we aim to be.
You aim to be, but
Yes.
you're not yet, are you?
I can't specifically tell about the other mines, but that's our goal, to be one of the modern, or the most modern mine in the world. And we have come a pretty long way to get there.
Since the discovery in the beginning of 2023, miners have been drilling a tunnel from the operational mine to Europe's largest rare earth deposit. It contains about 1.3 million tons of rare earth oxides, including neodymium, that are waiting to be mined.
So we see the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning.
It's up to you to choose.
Hello.
Hello, welcome. Welcome to the exploration drift for Kiruna deposit.
We finally made it after a long travel down. So, how far are we from the beginning of the Pergeir deposit here?
Approximately 5 kilometers, but the total length of the exploration drift is around 8 kilometers.
So you still need to dig 5 kilometers to get there. And we have a lot of water here.
Yeah. It's not if you look at the roof and everywhere, it's not. It's from the drill rig. So it's no water from the face or from the tunnel itself. It's from the drill rig and the drilling.
So here we have reached the end of the tunnel, which symbolizes the future of Europe. 5 kilometers further, we have the Pergeir rare earth deposit, which can provide us with the critical metals that we need for a transition to clean energy, clean mobility, and which also allows us to set up the full value chain from mine to EV in Europe.
But the mine gives and the mine takes. The city is literally sinking into the earth. 125 years of mining has taken its toll.
We have that shake every night and sometimes in the day. In the day, it's not explosions, but the mountain is setting together.
And do you already see a real physical impact of that to the houses, that they start cracking? It starts cracking in some places.
6,000 Kiruna residents, or 1/3 of the population, are forced to relocate. The old houses are being demolished.
So here behind the blue fences, you can see the beginning of the moving of the city. These buildings have already been dispossessed. And of course, it gives a bit of a strange feeling, a bit of loneliness of the fact that this city is moving. How do you feel psychologically about the fact that you have to move?
No, everybody here accept it.
I'm positive about it. I think it's great.
I like it. I'm working in the mine, so it's marvelous.
It's necessary for Kiruna, so we can still work and live here.
If you live in an apartment that you rent, you get a new place. And if you live in an apartment or a house that you own, you get money for it.
If we cannot take up the blocks from the mine, no Kiruna.
Kiruna won't survive.
Just a few kilometers away from the old city center, they are building a new, modern one.
We stand here in front of the famous Kiruna Church, an iconic building that was voted some time ago as the most beautiful building of Sweden. 600 tons of wood. And the strange thing about this particular church is that it will be moved in its entirety because of the expansion of the mine. How they're going to move this church, I have no idea, but they claim that they will do it in 2026.
One group of people who does not support the mine is the indigenous Sami population. They have lived with nature for millennia. Fishing, hunting, and reindeer husbandry are central to Sami culture and society, which they believe are all under threat from the mining expansion.
Hello, Stefan.
Boris, welcome to Sami.
Thank you for willing to speak to me.
Yes, thank you for the invitation.
I have some questions for you. Don't know if it's safe for me to stand here.
Yes, of course, why not?
I have no food. So reindeer husbandry is your history and your present.
Yes, it is. Following my ancestors' choice of life and culture.
Yeah. And I understand that you believe this way of living is under pressure now from the mining industry here and potential expansions of the mining.
Yes.
Is that the case?
Yes, the green transition and the demands from European Union puts very big pressure on the indigenous peoples of the Arctic. We are not the entertainment for European Union or Europeans. We have the right to continue with our culture and livelihoods and reindeer husbandry if we choose so ourselves, and we do obviously do so.
During large periods in the year, 250,000 of the Sami reindeer are free to graze wherever they want in the northern parts of Sweden, Finland, and Norway. The mining expansion is disrupting their grazing routes as the landscape is fragmented. This reindeer husbandry is more than the Sami culture. It's also their food.
Climate change is escalating, and it affects everything that is living, and it also affects animals, and parasites and diseases are spreading to the north that we have never seen before.
I feel your pain, absolutely. On the other hand, of course, we know that without metals, we can't make a transition to a climate-neutral economy. When the metals are available here in the north, isn't there a possibility to do it in a way that is socially, ecologically, culturally responsible?
We can live without metals, but we can't live without food. If we don't have the possibility to have a food sovereignty as indigenous peoples, we have lost one huge and important item for our culture's survival. One of the few remaining possibilities to combat climate change for coming generation will be lost, and it will be lost forever. It is not in Amazonas the solution lays only, but also up here in the circumpolar Arctic.
So you don't see any possibility of a reconciliation, a model in which you share benefits with the mining companies here?
Not if it's indigenous people who sit with a bill in the end.
The Sami fear that they will pay the price for the climate-neutral solutions with their ancient way of life. Jones fully supports their arguments for a less consumerist society in his personal life. But in a world of 9.7 billion people in 2050, a solution is needed to preserve the entire planet.
I really feel the Sami perspective. I really understand the Sami perspective. But it is a local perspective, and we have to look at this also from a global point of view. To meet the climate targets, we need so much metals. The question is, where are we going to get the metals from? Are we going to mine in regions where human rights are atrocious, in regions where biodiversity is being destroyed? Or are we going to try to do it in those places where we do it in a responsible way? That is a fundamental question for me.
A majority of the population is in favor of more mining here in the north of Sweden. A minority is against. The indigenous Sami and a group of environmentalists. But what does the mining company believe can be done?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, and thank you for having me here.
Dr. Jones meets with CEO Jan Moström to discuss the future of mining for energy transition metals in Europe.
Here in the north of Sweden, we have the impression that by and large people are in favor of responsible mining of critical metals, except one group, which is likely to be the Sami population. So do you have any specific plans on how to involve them and get them on board of your activities?
The most important thing to have a continuous dialogue with Samis and all stakeholders. And what I think is important, and that is important for us as a mining company, but for all stakeholders, is that the most important issue in our lifetime will be how to deal with the climate change. And now when we are in the Arctic part of Scandinavia, here we really can see the climate change and the impact.
And the Sami can see it themselves as well, because their reindeer are being affected.
Their culture is being affected. So of course we have to have that dialogue and say the only way we can change this is to reduce our enormous consumptions of oil, coal and gas. And there are only one way to do that, and that starts in the mine. The whole climate change is a question about how to get access to metals and minerals that make it possible to produce electricity, to store its electricity and use it.
But what's Jan Moström's opinion on more mining of lithium, cobalt and nickel, 3 essential elements for the battery industry? And yes, we have these critical metals in our bedrock. For instance, look at this map that highlights all known lithium deposits in Europe. There are loads of them.
Your educated guess, in 10 years, how many new mines do you think we will have in Europe?
Oh,
make a guess.
I hope that we talk about at least something between 10 to 15. But I think that is a stretch in the 10 years perspective. But
well, let's say 15 years.
I hope that we would have an exponential increase, so we perhaps talk about something the double. I think we have a critical mass of the population in Europe understands that this is necessary to do, but not in my backyard. So we have to find a way of getting a clearer understanding on, yes, sorry, but for the greater good, we have to do it, and we have to do it here because a deposit is where it is. You can't move it. It's not as a factory. You can decide if you want to have a gigafactory here or there, but the deposit is there.
Can we develop a different mining model, which is more a benefit-sharing, community-centric model, where the local community also profits directly from the activity?
I think so. We have quite a good local understanding and acceptance of mines.
And you even have the acceptance of most people that they will have to move part of the town to
we are
the other
moving.
side.
Actually, we are moving 2 towns, both Malmberget and now here Kiruna.
And you're moving the 600-ton church to the other side of the town. So
that's correct.
Good luck with moving that church.
Yeah.
For the majority of his lifetime, Dr. Peter Tom Jones advocated a green ideology, where mining was regarded as bad for the planet. In recent years, however, he has come to a different conclusion.
Yeah, so I must admit, I have changed my mind as regards mining. To make the transition to climate neutrality, we need the massive rollout of electric vehicles, wind turbines, batteries. This is only possible if we have sufficient quantities of lithium, nickel, cobalt, rare earths. And to provide these metals, we really need more mines. But obviously, we need to do it in a more responsible way. We need responsible mining.
In the Nordic countries, this responsible way of mining is well established. At Aitik, in the north of Sweden, they have electrified a significant part of their fleet of mining trucks.
It's gonna be fun.
This is a rumor that female drivers here are better drivers than male drivers.
I agree.
You agree?
Yes, I agree.
And what's the reason for that?
I think we are gentle to the machine.
You have more patience.
And we think about the safety.
So the male drivers drive the little SUVs and the female drivers drive the big trucks.
Yes.
That's how it should be. So what you can see here is responsible mining in action. We are sitting in an electrified mining truck driven by a female employee. Only in Sweden and Finland you can see that.
When the electrification of the whole fleet is completed, Boliden will save up to 30 million litres of diesel a year. And this is only one of the steps this mining company is taking to become climate neutral by 2050.
So what makes this mine so different from all the other mines in the rest of the world?
I would think actually when you come and have a look here, you would feel that it is a bit like any other mine. But very much the devil is in the details, I would say. We work, for instance, a lot with the health and safety of the workers. To be here is just as safe as to be a shopkeeper in Sweden or to be a taxi driver, while elsewhere is one of the most dangerous professions. Due to the very low grade that we are mining here, we have to work a lot with the production efficiency in all part of the production.
But does that then mean that you need more chemicals to recover the metals?
Actually, here we use less reagents than elsewhere. And also we work a lot with finding alternative reagents with less environmental impact, for instance, being biodegradable and so on.
But still, environmentalists will say you're creating a huge scar in nature. What's they going to do there?
So we of course, we have an impact from the operations, but we also work with the biodiversity projects where we increase the biodiversity elsewhere to compensate for the loss of biodiversity here at the mine site. So actually to have a net positive impact.
But the immense waste production is still the Achilles heel of the mining industry. This copper mine produces up to 40 million tons of tailings every year. This waste is stored in huge tailing ponds for decades. If responsible mining is to become the new paradigm, it's essential to tackle this problem as well.
Acid mine drainage is the biggest environmental problem for all sulfidic mining sites in the world. Here, they have solved the problem by separating the high sulfur fraction from the low sulfur fraction, and for both tailing fractions they are finding resource recovery opportunities. And that is a huge step towards lowering the overall environmental footprint of this site.
A near-zero waste approach is their ultimate ambition through the recovery of the metals from the tailings and the reuse of the remaining minerals for new environmentally friendly building products. Today, the main focus at Aitik is to continue mining copper, a metal that is used in many products and is also an essential element for the transition to a climate-neutral society.
Lithium is the poster boy for the clean mobility revolution. Why should we bother about copper?
I have a piece of copper here actually from this mine. And I think what you need to think about is that copper, it is the bread and butter of society. And especially talking about electrification and what we plan to do with green energy, then we will need a lot more copper.
So does that mean that copper is then a critical metal?
It is now listed on the EU list of critical and strategic metals.
So if it's listed, then it means we should be worried about the security of supply.
If you think of rare earth oxides, for instance, then you might cover the demand by one mine. But with copper, just for the electric mobility, you would probably need in the order of 10 mines of this size.
10 mines of this huge mega monster size?
Yes.
You must be joking.
I'm dead serious, because I'm Finnish.
Okay. A lot of people are claiming that we need to open new mines. Other people would say we need to solve the problem by recycling more. The thing is that you can't recycle what you don't have in the cycle yet. So for nickel, cobalt, rare earths, lithium, we need a primary input first. And then maybe in 20, 25 years, then we can close the circle and we can rely upon a recycling economy fully, and we don't need this primary influx anymore.
What's the policy of the European Union? In the last 10 years, almost no new mines have been opened. However, since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the importance of securing resources has never been more vital.
Today I have a meeting with Maros Šefčovič, the Executive Vice President of the European Commission. If someone can move the needle, then it's this guy. I'm really curious to hear his opinions.
Maros Šefčovič is one of the architects of the Critical Raw Materials Act and the European Battery Alliance. He is also responsible for the implementation of the European Green Deal.
You have a very popular name. I mean,
yes,
I know it's be it in a pop music or now I understand in critical.
The meeting is friendly, but more importantly, what's his vision on mining in Europe?
I know that mining had a bad name because of the history, but totally we are in different century, we have different technologies, we have different rules. We know how to do it in Europe. We just have to have a couple of successful projects where we'll prove, look, this is how it should be done. So member states and investors would start to believe again in European mining.
The typical number that we hear is that we need at least 10 to 15 new mines for energy transition metals by 2030. Do you think this is realistic?
To have 13 mines open and being able to process the extraction material in 7 years, it's very ambitious, even for ambitious commission. So I would say we need to go in that direction. The mining had this bad aura around it, but I think that we are gradually changing. We would be the most sustainable on this planet because it's our ethos, this is how we do the thing.
I have seen recently that clearly the political mood in terms of mining in Europe has changed for the better, but the investment mood hasn't. We still see that investors prefer to put their money in gigafactories rather than in mines. So how do we get the investors on board?
I would say that the same mood as it is now with mines was 5 years with gigafactories. When I was starting with the European Battery Alliance, there was also lots of hesitation in that regard. But what the investors need to see are the first successful projects, and then the mood changes. But we need to make it a little bit easier for investors to come and invest.
Mining the metals in Europe is just the beginning. They also need to be processed and refined into high-purity metals. A factory in Finland is doing just this.
This is the heart of the smelter, so to say.
And 3 people are managing the whole thing.
Of course, we have a separate control room for the acid plants, but this is for the smelter.
In the past decades, the refining industry has moved primarily to China, who dominates the refining of critical metals even more than the mining.
Can you explain to me why the Chinese have become so powerful in the refining business for copper, nickel, lithium, rare earths, anywhere, anything?
They have been investing on different processing technologies for decades already. Plus, they have been sourcing raw materials for their processes globally.
So how can we then still compete with them? What's our competitive advantage?
We have to be more efficient. We have a smelter run by a total of 570 people. In China, I would guess there would be easily 2,000 to 3,000 working in a similar plant. Isn't it beautiful? I mean, this is the anode copper. Some spills during the casting. And in my opinion, this is a piece of art.
Are the European metals really refined in a more green and environmentally friendly way? Take the example of nickel. The difference in CO2 emissions per ton of produced nickel is striking. Emissions here in Finland are so much lower than in Indonesia, the global nickel powerhouse. This is thanks to the low-carbon process used in Finland, so-called flash smelting.
I would say the main reason is that we are minimizing the usage of fossil fuels in our processes. Instead, we utilize the sulfur that is contained in the concentrates and oxidize it so that generates the heat that we use for smelting the material.
So you are producing metals in a fair way. Are your customers willing to pay a premium for your fair metals?
At least some of the customers are aware of importance of the CO2 footprint. For example, with windmill farmers, which are willing to buy green copper, low CO2 copper for their mill production, and also on electrical vehicles, we are looking for that kind of opportunities.
Could we go one step further and raise a border adjustment tax on dirty materials coming into Europe?
It would be fair for European metal refining companies, because sometimes it feels that we are not competing on the same rules with our competitors.
Important news for the European refining industry, because the European Union is taking action.
And our message is very, very simple. Pay the fair carbon price at home, or pay it at borders to Europe, because we are not going to allow anymore that we would be penalized for, as you said, producing fair metals, for suppressing and lowering our carbon footprint, only to be kind of replaced by the cheap carbon-intense imports from abroad. So it will not be easy to implement. We have to make sure that this mechanism works. So we are starting now with, I would say, this reporting phase for 1 or 2 years, and then once we are very clear about the mechanism and methodology, we start to introduce the levies.
So here in the Nordic countries, metals are produced in a socially and environmentally responsible way. I would like to call them fair metals, in analogy to fair trade coffee or fair trade chocolates. And for those products, we are willing to pay a higher price, a premium. So we should be doing the same thing for fair metals, except that downstream users should also pay a higher price for them.
Why is Europe counting on the Nordic countries to resist the Chinese wave? What's their secret? Here in Espoo, close to Helsinki, the capital of Finland, the brand new research centers spring up like mushrooms, led by the Finnish state-owned research center, VTT.
I see so many brand new buildings. Unbelievable. Yeah. So all these buildings there, it's all VTT, or?
I would say that every second building is VTT and every second building is perhaps Aalto University.
According to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, Finland is #1 worldwide in industry, innovation and infrastructure in the global battery supply chain ranking. They are just ahead of their neighbors in Sweden.
Congratulations, Päivi. You beat the Swedish.
Yeah, that's true. It's like in ice hockey. But yeah, to be serious, we have a lot of collaboration with industry, and this is perhaps something that not all countries have.
Yeah, many countries working with industry is dirty. You don't do that.
No, it's absolutely the opposite here. So we want to work with the industry, and that's why we have invested a lot in the piloting facilities so that we can prove the technologies.
In pilot factories, researchers test innovative technologies. If proven successful, they can be upscaled by industry. In this hydrometallurgical pilot plant, VTT is developing new ways to recycle critical metals from spent batteries.
Exactly.
And the world of batteries is changing at breakneck speed.
So, Päivi, how can you compete with all these Chinese battery researchers?
With the current battery technologies, it's very difficult. But for example, VTT is developing next generation batteries. One example is this kind of sodium-ion battery. And the idea here is that you wouldn't use critical raw materials. So this kind of battery would be possible to be used in stationary storage.
Are there other examples of electric vehicle batteries?
Yes, we do have. So this one is the lithium-ion solid-state battery. And this means that the energy density in this battery is much higher than in the current batteries.
And what would that mean in terms of the range of such an electric car?
That could be perhaps like 50% longer than with the current batteries.
And I guess the Chinese are also working on this technology.
Yes, that's true. So everybody is working on next generation batteries, and there is different kind of chemistries that are being developed.
Research and innovation are key, because also in the domain of battery production, Europe has some serious catching up to do.
The global battery manufacturing sector is dominated by one country. Guess who? Yes, correct, China. 77% of the market.
In the Finnish city of Salo, Dr. Jones is going to speak to Matthew Congleton, the US-born production director of Valmet Automotive, where they assemble battery packs for all kinds of electric cars and off-highway vehicles.
So today we're working without a helmet. Thank God for that. And my haircut.
It's always important to have good hair days.
Yes.
Valmet Automotive in Finland also has to compete with Chinese products.
So we're going to take 2 cells, and we're going to build a mini module, and then we're going to take 6 mini modules, so 12 total cells to build a battery pack. And then after the 12 become the battery pack, we then build the housing and build the full battery that we send to the customer.
So are you already feeding a lot of European-made battery cells in your plant here?
So currently we're not utilizing a lot of European-made materials for the cells, but the rest of our products actually mostly come from Europe. The cells currently are coming from Asia. We do have the possibility in the future to utilize European products, as long as they meet the same supplier requirements for quality and form.
Because ideally they would come from a plant in Sweden or Finland or Norway.
Absolutely. So we're proud to make batteries here in Finland and Europe, and we would love to get more components from Europe.
Okay, wonderful.
So the final product is still about 100 meters down the line.
To walk, so in 10 seconds we can be there.
Yeah, if we run.
If I run very fast.
Driven by the EU ban on the sale of internal combustion engine vehicles by 2035, the construction of many battery gigafactories in Europe is planned. However, the competition with China and the United States is ferocious, and Europe will need to be innovative to stay in the market.
So this is what we call a collaborative robot, and this is kind of the future of manufacturing, where we have a robot without a safety cage working side by side with a human being. And it allows us to do operations faster and more stable and safely.
And does this offer a competitive advantage for Europe?
Definitely, I think that this is one of our areas where we can compete with the lower cost areas. So with this automation, with this technology, we can help drive the cost of the battery lower and therefore compete on the global market from Europe. So I think one of the things that makes us special in Europe is our education and technical ability levels. So in Finland, for example, we have a highly developed educational system, and it allows us to leverage our knowledge to then compete with the lower cost areas. So of course you have less employees, but highly skilled employees.
The battery manufacturing capacity is growing in Europe, but China still has a big lead. These battery factories also need resources, preferably also from Europe.
Where we need to catch up, this is the battery production, quality of the batteries, and therefore we invest a lot of money, I think actually more than China, in research and innovation of the batteries. And I believe that once we would reach the full capacity of the gigafactories which are being built in Europe for producing the batteries, also the cost of batteries would go down.
And I think that also the gigafactories, one of the reasons they're more expensive is that the system is not fully developed in Europe. So in China, they've done a very good job of building the whole value chain. So they have everything from the mining, the processing and refining, to the cell factories, to the full assembly. Whereas in Europe,
that's what we need in Europe.
We're working very quickly to catch up, but we're a little bit behind.
So you think we can catch up?
I do think we can. And I think that we will, because I think the world has changed a lot in the last couple of years. So
I have read in a Chinese newspaper that they say that their lead is unassailable and the global north is lost.
Yeah, but somebody once said the Titanic was unsinkable, and we saw how that turned out. So nothing is impossible. So here we can see the final product that we build in our assembly line. This is a mild hybrid battery that we produce in Europe for European customers.
So today I've become very hopeful after hearing this story. This is a battery made in Europe, still with Korean cells, but in the future we can go one step further. Produce the batteries here with cells produced in a gigafactory in Europe that is served with materials from Europe. So I'm definitely not claiming that electric cars are the solution for the global climate problem. If we just all replace our regular cars with electric cars, we would still be in traffic jams all over the place. But it is a symbol for a drastic transition that we need to have in terms of our mobility system. We need to electrify our mobility system. Electric cars, electric bikes, electric buses, electric trucks. These are all part of a bigger solution.
The last step in the value chain is the production of electric vehicles. In Uusikaupunki in Finland, Dr. Jones visits another site of Valmet Automotive. This independent vehicle contract manufacturer is also a very flexible and fast producer of cars, including electric cars from different brands.
I always say that we can manufacture any kind of vehicle. When it's 4 wheels or 3 wheels, when it's a steering wheel or autonomous driving, so there is no restrictions what we can produce. We have a long history of building the first electric vehicles already back in 2009.
2009?
Yeah, 2009. So we have built the competence and we are ready for the transition.
So China makes EVs 40% cheaper than we do here. How can we survive in Europe?
We see that more as an opportunity than challenge. We are independent manufacturers, so we are serving the market needs.
Like many major EU-based companies, Valmet Automotive is partly owned by a Chinese company. China's CATL has 23% of the shares. This could also be a reason why Valmet Automotive sees China as an opportunity rather than a threat. Today, they are only producing European brands, so it's in their interest for the European car industry to do well.
So Ursula von der Leyen is going to do this anti-subsidy investigation, and probably she wants to raise trade barriers and tariffs. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's a good idea, but like I said, I think it doesn't make sense to start a trade war between the countries who are anyway depending on each other. So there needs to be some kind of combination and compromise.
But Joe Biden is offering 7,500 euros tax credit when an American buys a made in America electric car. So what should Europe do?
Germany has had incentives when you buy an electric vehicle. They have made decisions, and that is now vanished away.
7,500 euros?
I know it was not that much. I don't remember how much was it.
And not only that, but Joe Biden is also directly subsidizing the mines, the refineries, the battery plants. Every single step in the supply chain is getting attention.
Business is business. I think Europe has to come up with their own ideas how to create the more jobs in the automotive industry or more awareness of European products. So as a European, yes, we need to do something. I don't take that much of speculation what it could be. Tariff is one. We know that it's different here in Europe than in US. And there might be also some other things. As long as the European automotive industry will start to feeling much better than today.
Time is running out because all these Chinese cars will enter the European market soon. A tsunami of relatively cheap electric vehicles. Europe must act fast because decarbonization could lead to de-industrialization.
We in Europe, we are really free traders, but we also want to be fair traders. If it's fair, there is nothing to worry about. If it's not fair, we have to just simply use our trade defense mechanisms, because we shouldn't kind of repeat the photovoltaic panel history. I think we paid very high price. The innovation was coming from Europe, but we again kind of let our market to be captured by subsidized production.
The same for wind turbines at the moment?
Now therefore we have very intense discussions with the wind industry. We never thought that we would need to use them, but the geoeconomics has changed so much over the last 3 years that, I mean, there is no other choice.
There is one more challenge for the Senior Vice President of Valmet Automotive. Can he produce an electric vehicle of less than 25,000 euros with made-in-Europe batteries and motors? A vehicle that is cost competitive with those arriving per ship from China.
NGO, Transport and Energy. They are producing a vodcast about the possibility to produce in Europe a car that costs less than 25,000 euros. Do you think that is a realistic target?
At the moment, as we speak, is as realistic as any target. Service provider like us with established infrastructure, we can meet the challenge. We can start meeting that challenge. I don't say that Finland is the cheapest country to produce something. That's not the case. But in comparison within the Europe, we are also not the most expensive ones.
So Transport and Energy should contact you to develop this 25K car.
Yeah, they should contact us. We are here.
I will give your phone number.
Yeah.
That's good.
Thank you. We are always ready to talk.
Yes.
Earlier, we as a manufacturer, we can step in. First of all, we can bring in the knowledge, is that product manufacturable? And second of all, we can bring our competence into the product engineering to get that 25,000 euros.
So you also have an impact in the product engineering itself? Okay.
Yes. And when the product is mature, and we have been part of that process already in the beginning, I think we can do it within 12, 15 months, easily.
So 2025, we can produce in this factory.
You give me the product.
25K car.
You give me the product, and I will give you then the speed.
Brilliant. Slowly, Europe is waking up. What we really need is an industrial strategy where decarbonization does not go hand in hand with de-industrialization. So let's go for made in Europe, clean technologies, and the Nordic countries lead by example.